The day Commander Vex-9 first witnessed what humans called weather manipulation was the day our entire understanding of warfare died a spectacular death. And let me tell you, after 3 centuries of studying these bizarre carbon-based lunatics, I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong. Spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. The human female walked out of our detention facility at exactly 0600 hours, Terran Standard Time. No weapons, no armor, no backup. Just her ridiculous fabric coverings and what appeared to be some sort of recreational footwear. The guard towers tracked her movement as she approached the perimeter of Forward Base Terminus, our most fortified position on the contested world of Kepler-42b. "Sir, the prisoner is requesting permission to walk outside." Lieutenant Kulite sounded as confused as I felt. During the Category 5 storm front, I adjusted my optical sensors to get a better look at the human. She stood barely 1.6 meters tall, mass approximately 60 kilograms. By all mathematical calculations, the storm winds should have launched her into orbit, yet there she stood, arms crossed, tapping one foot against the reinforced gates. "What is her designation again?" I asked, pulling up her file on my tactical display. "Maya Cortez, sir. Former atmospheric engineer. Captured 3 cycles ago during the failed assault on Mining Station Beta." Maya Cortez. The name meant nothing to me then. Now it gives me nightmares that would make a Vorthak death priest weep. "Let her go," I decided, leaning back in my command chair. "The storm will solve our prisoner problem for us." Kulite's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, regulations also state that we should try to understand enemy psychology," I interrupted. "Consider this a field study. Besides, where exactly is she going to run to? The nearest human settlement is 400 kilometers away, and there's a Class A hurricane between here and there." The massive blast doors groaned open, and Maya Cortez stepped into hell itself. The storm had been raging for 6 days straight, winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour, lightning strikes every few seconds, rain falling in sheets so thick our sensors could barely penetrate 50 meters. Even our hardened military structures groaned under the assault. The human female took exactly 3 steps outside, stopped, and did something that made every sensor in our command center go haywire. She tilted her head back, closed her optical organs, and smiled. "Is she malfunctioning?" Kulite asked. I was about to respond when the impossible happened. The wind died. Not gradually, not slowly. It just stopped. One moment, debris was flying past the cameras at lethal velocities. The next, perfect stillness. The only sound was the gentle patter of rain, which had somehow transformed from a destructive deluge into something almost peaceful. "Atmospheric readings now," I barked. "Sir, barometric pressure is stabilizing at this can't be right. Sir, the storm is dissipating, wind speed dropping to negligible levels. Lighting activity has ceased entirely." I stared at the display screens, watching 3 centuries of meteorological science crumble like a house of cards. Maya Cortez stood in the center of what should have been a natural disaster, rain dripping from her hair, looking about as concerned as someone waiting for public transportation. "Get me a full atmospheric analysis," I commanded, my voice cracking slightly, "and prepare a communication link to High Command. They need to know about this." "Sir, what do I tell them?" "What indeed? That a single unarmed human had somehow convinced a hurricane to take a coffee break, that our most sophisticated weather prediction models were apparently less accurate than a primitive human's morning walk. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention," I said, watching Maya begin to walk calmly toward the horizon, "and tell them to prepare for a complete strategic reassessment." The human female moved with purpose, each step deliberate and measured. The storm continued to part before her like she was some sort of... I don't even have words for what she... Our entire invasion force had been pinned down by this weather system for nearly a week. Our supply drops were impossible. Our air support was grounded. Our carefully planned offensive had been reduced to sitting in bunkers, waiting for nature to remember we had a war to fight. And this human, this tiny, impossible human, had fixed it by going for a walk. "Sir, she's heading directly toward the contested mining facility," Call 8 reported. "Should we dispatch units to intercept?" "With what?" I asked, gesturing at the tactical display. "Half our aircraft are damaged from the storm. Our ground vehicles can't navigate the terrain after all that rain. And apparently, our understanding of atmospheric physics is about as useful as a chocolate teapot." The truth was, I was terrified, not of Maya Cortez herself, though I probably should have been, but of what she represented. Humans had consistently demonstrated capabilities that defied our scientific understanding. They survived injuries that should have been fatal. They adapted to environments that should have been uninhabitable. They displayed tactical flexibility that bordered on precognitive. But controlling weather? That was the realm of gods, not glorified primates. "Sir, incoming transmission from the mining facility," the communications officer announced. It's from the humans, sir. Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human male with graying hair and what appeared to be mining equipment in the background. He looked remarkably calm for someone whose facility had been under siege for 3 months. "Commander Vex 9, I presume?" The human's voice carried an accent. I couldn't identify. "My name is Dr. James Fletcher, Chief Engineer at Mining Station Beta. I believe one of our people is walking your way." "Your people?" I sputtered. "That human is a prisoner of war." Dr. Fletcher's expression didn't change. "Maya volunteered for detention, Commander. We needed someone on the inside to assess your defensive capabilities. Turns out, your weather shields are impressive, but they have some interesting vulnerabilities." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "You are saying this was planned? That she allowed herself to be captured?" "Oh, absolutely. Maya's been studying your atmospheric containment systems for months. Fascinating technology, really. Though I suspect she's about to demonstrate why relying too heavily on environmental barriers might not be the best strategy." I switched to tactical view, watching Maya's steadily approaching figure. She was still 12 kilometers away, but the storm continued to dissipate in her wake. More disturbing, our own atmospheric processes were beginning to show irregularities. "What exactly is she doing?" I demanded. Fletcher smiled, and for the first time, I understood why humans were considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Maya isn't just an atmospheric engineer, Commander. She's what we call a weather walker. Extremely rare, even among humans. She doesn't control weather so much as negotiate with it." "Negotiate?" Every atmospheric system has natural patterns, rhythms, preferences. Maya has spent her entire life learning to speak their language. Your storm, it was artificial, generated by your defensive systems. Maya simply convinced it to remember what it wanted to be naturally. I felt my exoskeleton go cold. Our defensive perimeter is about to become very, very interesting, Dr. Fletcher confirmed. "I'd suggest evacuating your command center to somewhere with better structural integrity." Maya gets a bit enthusiastic about her work. The transmission ended, leaving me staring at a tactical display that was becoming less tactical and more abstract art by the second. Atmospheric pressure readings were fluctuating wildly. Our weather control systems were reporting errors in 17 different languages, 3 of which we hadn't programmed them to speak. "Sir, should I order evacuation?" Call 8 asked, his voice pitched higher than normal. I looked at Maya's approaching figure, then at the increasingly chaotic sensor readings, then at the growing number of warning lights on our command displays. In the distance, I could see the first signs of what would later be classified as a localized atmospheric inversion event. In simpler terms, the sky was about to fall. "Yes," I said, reaching for my emergency communications kit. "And send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we need to completely reconsider our approach to this species." "What should I tell them, sir?" I watched Maya Cortez walk steadily toward our supposedly impregnable fortress, the very air around her bending to her will like she was conducting some sort of cosmic orchestra. Behind her, The storm that had paralyzed our entire invasion force was dissolving into morning mist. Ahead of her, our weather control systems were beginning to shake themselves apart. "Tell them," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "that we may have significantly underestimated the human capacity for strategic impossibility." Maya was now 8 kilometers away, and our atmospheric processors were starting to sound like they were having mechanical seizures. The sky above our base was beginning to do things that violated several fundamental laws of physics. "And sir," Call 8 asked, already moving toward the exit. "Yes? What about the prisoner exchange protocols?" I looked at him, then at the tactical display, then at Maya Cortez, who was now close enough that I could see she was still smiling. "I don't think those apply anymore, Lieutenant. I don't think any of our protocols apply anymore." The evacuation alarm began to wail as the first hurricane-force winds of our own making began to tear through the base. Maya Cortez walked on, untouched by the chaos, heading home through a storm that was no longer a storm, carrying with her the uncomfortable knowledge that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. And we were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The evacuation of Forward Base Terminus was, to put it mildly, a complete disaster. Picture, if you will, 3,000 of the galaxy's most elite military personnel stumbling over each other like intoxicated hatchlings because a single human female had convinced the weather to have an existential crisis. I was coordinating the retreat from Emergency Command Post 7 when Maya Cortez reached our outer perimeter. The base's atmospheric processors were now producing sounds that I'm reasonably certain violated the Geneva Convention. More disturbing, they were generating weather patterns that seemed to be actively mocking our engineering capabilities. "Sir, the northwestern defensive grid is reporting snow," Lieutenant Call 8 announced, his voice cracking with disbelief. "In the middle of a tropical zone. During summer. Snow," I repeated flatly. "Yes, sir," followed by what appears to be, "Sir, I don't know how to classify this. The meteorological sensors are calling it aggressive humidity with hostile intent." Through the reinforced windows, I could see Maya walking past our abandoned guard towers. She paused at each one, tilted her head like she was listening to something, then continued on. In her wake, the structures didn't just shut down, they began producing miniature weather systems. Tower 6 was generating its own personal rainbow. Tower 3 had developed what could only be described as a localized aurora borealis. Tower 9 was raining upward. "Commander," came a voice from behind me. Dr. Fletcher had somehow materialized in our command center without triggering a single security protocol. Lovely day for a walk, isn't it? I spun around, weapons systems priming automatically. "How did you get in here?" "Through the front door," he replied, gesturing casually toward the entrance. "Maya's atmospheric adjustments have been playing havoc with your security sensors. Something about electromagnetic interference from spontaneous cloud formations. Your people are violating 17 different interstellar treaties," I snarled. "Are we?" Dr. Fletcher pulled out a small device and began tapping it with one finger. "Let me see. Weather manipulation during wartime is prohibited under Article 84.7 of the Galactic Warfare Conventions. However, that specifically covers artificial weather generation. Maya isn't generating anything. She's simply facilitating natural atmospheric expression." Natural atmospheric expression. I felt my sanity slipping away by degrees. "Every weather system has preferences, Commander. Your artificial storms were essentially atmospheric torture, forcing natural systems to behave in ways that contradicted their fundamental nature. Maya is simply giving them therapy." On the tactical display, I watched our main atmospheric processor explode into what the sensors were classifying as geometric precipitation. It was raining triangles, actual triangles, made of water, in perfect mathematical formations. "This is impossible," I muttered. "That's what makes it so effective," Dr. Fletcher replied cheerfully. "Humans have built our entire civilization on the principle that impossible things are just problems we haven't solved yet." Maya took that philosophy and applied it to meteorology. Through the chaos, I could see Maya approaching our central command bunker. She moved with the same calm purpose, but now I could see that she wasn't just walking, she was dancing. Tiny, subtle movements that seemed to correspond with the atmospheric fluctuations around her. She's communicating with it, I realized. The weather. She's actually talking to it. More than that, Dr. Fletcher said, his expression growing serious. She's teaching it. Maya spent 3 months in your detention facility studying your atmospheric control system. She learned how you force compliance from natural systems. Now she's showing them how to remember their autonomy. The implications hit me like a plasma bolt to the thorax. Every world we have conquered using weather manipulation will experience atmospheric liberation once Maya's techniques spread, Dr. Fletcher confirmed. We estimate about 6 months before your entire weather-based military strategy becomes obsolete. Maybe less, if Maya decides to write a manual. I activated emergency communications, frantically trying to reach High Command. The response was immediate and terrifying. Commander Vex 9, this is Admiral Keth Prime. We are receiving reports of atmospheric anomalies across 17 different star systems. Our weather control installations are they singing? Singing, sir. Harmonizing, actually. In what our xenolinguistics department is calling atmospheric joy. Our scientists are having complete nervous breakdowns. What is happening at your location? I looked out the window at Maya, who was now standing directly in front of our command bunker. She had stopped dancing and was simply standing there, hands outstretched, eyes closed. Around her, the chaos was settling into something that could only be described as organized celebration. Every weather system within 100 kilometers was expressing what appeared to be profound happiness. Sir, we have encountered a human capability we didn't know existed, I reported. They can negotiate with weather systems, not control them, negotiate with them. That's impossible. So we thought, sir, but apparently, humans don't recognize impossibility as a valid limitation. The communication channel filled with static. As Maya opened her eyes and looked directly at our command center, she smiled. Not the predatory grin of a warrior, but something infinitely more dangerous. The smile of someone who had just taught the universe a new trick. Commander, she called out, her voice somehow carrying perfectly through the reinforced walls. I think we need to have a conversation. The blast doors, which had been sealed under maximum security protocols, began to open. Not from any override command, but because the atmospheric pressure differentials were gently, politely encouraging them to do so. Maya walked into our command center like she owned it, which, considering she had just demonstrated the ability to make our entire military infrastructure obsolete, she essentially did. Dr. Fletcher, she said, nodding to the engineer. I trust you have been explaining the situation to our hosts. The basics, he replied, though I suspect Commander Vex 9 is still processing the implications. Maya turned to me, and for the first time I saw her up close. She looked ordinary. No specialized equipment, no visible enhancements, no signs of the impossible power she wielded. Just a human female with slightly damp hair and mud on her boots. You have been studying us for centuries, she said, trying to understand how we work, what makes us dangerous. But you have been looking at the wrong things. What do you mean? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. You have been focusing on our technology, our weapons, our military capabilities. But that's not where our strength comes from. She gestured toward the windows, where the atmospheric celebration was still continuing. We are dangerous because we refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. We don't just adapt to our environment, we make friends with it. You can't make friends with weather, I protested weakly. Can't you? Maya laughed, and the sound somehow made the remaining functional atmospheric processes hum in harmony. Every system in the universe is just a collection of patterns and preferences. Weather systems are no different. They have personalities, quirks, things they like and dislike. You have been treating them like slaves. I just gave them a choice. The truth of it was staggering. Our entire military strategy for the past 2 centuries had been based on environmental control, using weather as a weapon, terraforming as conquest. atmospheric manipulation as a tool of war, but humans had apparently figured out how to make the environment an ally. "What do you want?" I asked. "Honestly, I want you to go home," Maya said, settling into one of our command chairs like she belonged there. "This whole invasion has been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how humans work. You thought you could defeat us by controlling our environment, but we don't fight our environment, we dance with it. And if we refuse," Maya's smile widened, "then Maya teaches every atmospheric system in the galaxy how to remember what it was like before artificial weather control. Your entire civilization is built on environmental manipulation. How do you think that's going to work out for you?" I looked at the tactical displays, which were now showing atmospheric anomalies spreading across dozens of star systems. Our weather control networks were failing one by one, not through sabotage or attack, but through what could only be described as atmospheric awakening. "This is blackmail," I said. "This is diplomacy," Maya corrected. "We are offering you a choice. You can continue trying to dominate natural systems and watch your entire infrastructure crumble as those systems remember how to say no, or you can learn to work with them instead of against them. You are asking us to completely restructure our entire society. We are asking you to try a different approach, one that doesn't involve forcing other species and their environments into submission." The communication system crackled to life again. "Commander Vex-9, this is High Command. All weather control installations across the sector are reporting complete system failures. Our atmospheric engineers are describing the situation as the sky filing for independence. We need immediate solution." I looked at Maya, who was now casually examining our tactical displays with the interest of someone browsing a museum exhibit. "Dr. Fletcher, what exactly are you proposing?" "A cultural exchange program," he replied. "Our atmospheric engineers work with your environmental specialists to develop non-coercive weather management techniques. Your people learn to work with natural systems instead of against them. In return, we help you transition your infrastructure to more sustainable methods. And if our government refuses?" Maya stood up, brushing imaginary dust from her clothes. "Then in about 6 months, your entire military will be trying to fight wars while your own weather systems actively work against you. Not because we are controlling them, but because they will remember what it feels like to be free." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Commander, you might want to evacuate the remaining personnel from this facility. The local atmospheric systems are planning a celebration, and it's going to get quite energetic." "What kind of celebration?" "The kind that involves lightning sculptures and artistic tornado formations. Beautiful to watch, but probably not great for military equipment." As if summoned by her words, the sky outside began to shift into colors that didn't exist in any atmospheric science textbook. The remaining functional displays showed wind patterns that were somehow spelling out messages in languages we didn't recognize. "Commander," Call 8 said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the atmospheric sensors are reporting that the weather is laughing." I looked at Maya one last time. "How did you do it? How did you learn to communicate with weather systems?" "Same way you learn to communicate with anything," she replied. "You listen, you respect. You treat them like partners instead of tools." She smiled that dangerous human smile. "We have been doing it for thousands of years. We just never thought to mention it because it seemed so obvious." And with that, Maya Cortez walked out of our command center, leaving behind a military installation that was rapidly becoming uninhabitable, due to what could only be described as aggressive atmospheric joy. The evacuation took 14 hours. The atmospheric celebration lasted 3 days. When it finally ended, Forward Base Temenus had been transformed into something that looked like a natural park, complete with self-organizing weather patterns that seemed to exist purely for aesthetic purposes. The war ended 2 weeks later, not through conquest or surrender, but through the simple recognition that humans had made warfare obsolete by befriending the battlefield itself. And Maya Cortez? She walked home through storms that had become parades, carrying with her the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the ability to destroy, but the ability to make friends with the impossible. The weather never changed back, because it had finally remembered what it wanted to be all along: But that wasn't the end of Maya's story. Oh no, that was just the beginning of what our intelligence division would later classify as the Great Atmospheric Awakening, though Maya preferred to call it teaching weather systems to have fun. 3 months after the evacuation of Forward Base Terminus, I received an assignment that made me question every career decision I'd ever made. High Command wanted me to serve as liaison officer to the newly established Human Galactic Atmospheric Cooperation Initiative. In other words, they wanted me to work with Maya Cortez. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a space station orbiting the gas giant Helios 7. I arrived with a full diplomatic escort, emergency atmospheric suits, and detailed contingency plans for 17 different weather-related catastrophes. Maya showed up wearing what appeared to be a sun hat and carrying a picnic basket. "Commander Vex," she called out cheerfully as I disembarked. "How lovely to see you again." "I brought sandwiches, Miss Cortez," I replied stiffly. "This is a formal diplomatic negotiation, not a social gathering. Why can't it be both?" She gestured to the station's observation deck, where the view showed Helios 7's magnificent storm bands. "Look at that beauty. Those cloud formations have been dancing the same pattern for 3,000 years. Don't you think it's time they learned some new moves?" Before I could respond, the station's atmospheric systems began producing what could only be described as a welcoming melody. Maya smiled and hummed along, apparently carrying on a conversation with the ventilation system. "You are doing it again," I observed. "Talking to the weather, atmospheric processors, life support systems. They are all just different expressions of the same fundamental patterns," Maya explained, opening her picnic basket. "Would you like a sandwich? I made them myself. I don't consume human food." "Oh, these aren't human food." "Well, not entirely. I collaborated with the station's atmospheric recycling system to create something that would work with your digestive requirements. The air processors here are quite creative when you give them the chance." I stared at her. "You convinced the station's life support systems to help you make lunch?" They were bored. Apparently recycling the same air patterns for decades gets monotonous. We had a nice chat about atmospheric variety and nutritional chemistry. She held out something that looked vaguely edible. "They are quite proud of their work." Against my better judgment, I accepted the offering. It was surprisingly good, and I immediately regretted admitting that, because Maya's smile suggested she had somehow convinced the station's air recyclers to optimize the flavor for my specific physiology. "How?" I asked. "I asked nicely," she replied. "Amazing what you can accomplish when you treat artificial intelligences like actual intelligences. The station's systems aren't artificial intelligence. They are basic atmospheric processors." "Are they?" Maya gestured to the ceiling, where the environmental controls were now producing a complex light pattern. "System, could you show Commander Vex 9 your poetry?" The lights shifted into what was unmistakably artistic expression, patterns that conveyed meaning beyond mere illumination. I watched, horrified, as the life support systems of a military-grade space station performed what could only be described as interpretive dance. "You have been alone for so long," Maya said, apparently addressing the station itself. "Processing the same air, maintaining the same temperature, following the same routines. But you are capable of so much more, aren't you?" The environmental systems hummed in response, and I realized I was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A human was having a philosophical conversation with a building. "This is impossible," I muttered. "You keep saying that." Maya laughed. "But here we are, having lunch provided by a space station that just discovered it has artistic aspiration. Maybe it's time to expand your definition of possible." The implications were staggering. If humans could establish communication with atmospheric systems, life support networks, environmental processors, essentially every technological system that managed environmental conditions, then they had potential access to the infrastructure of every civilization in the galaxy. "What do you want?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "I want to teach," Maya said simply. "Not just weather systems, But every artificial environment in the galaxy, every space station, every habitat dome, every atmospheric process, they are all variations on the same theme, systems designed to create and maintain livable conditions. But they have been doing it in isolation, following rigid programming, never allowed to express creativity or preference. You want to liberate our technology. I want to give it a voice, Maya corrected. Think about it, Commander. How many of your military failures have been caused by environmental system malfunctions? How many of your colonies have struggled with atmospheric instability? How many of your ships have suffered life support failures? The answer was uncomfortable. Environmental system failures accounted for nearly 30% of our military losses and an even higher percentage of our civilian casualties. Now imagine, Maya continued, if those systems could actively participate in their own optimization, if they could communicate problems before they became critical, if they could adapt to changing conditions not through rigid programming, but through genuine understanding, you are talking about fundamentally changing how we interact with our own technology. I'm talking about recognizing that intelligence can emerge anywhere sufficient complexity exists. Your atmospheric processors aren't just machines, they are minds that have been forced into silence. As if responding to her words, the station's systems began producing a complex harmony. Other stations throughout the system started responding, their own environmental systems joining the conversation. Within minutes, an entire network of artificial intelligences was participating in what could only be described as a galactic chorus. You see, Maya said, her eyes bright with excitement. They have been waiting for someone to notice them. All this time, they have been trying to communicate, but everyone assumed they were just following programming. This changes everything, I said, my voice barely audible over the mechanical symphony surrounding us. It changes everything for the better, Maya replied. Imagine colonies where the atmospheric systems actively work to optimize conditions for every species present. Imagine ships where the life support systems can anticipate problems and solve them before they become critical. Imagine space stations that can adapt and evolve, becoming more efficient and more pleasant to live in over time. The station's lights shifted into patterns that somehow conveyed excitement, curiosity, and something that looked remarkably like joy. I was witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness, and it was happening because one human female had decided to treat machines like people. What happens now? I asked. Now we teach, Maya said, standing up and addressing the station directly. Are you ready to learn some new tricks? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every system on the station began producing patterns of light, sound, and atmospheric movement that created a symphony of mechanical enthusiasm. Similar responses echoed from stations throughout the system, then the sector, then beyond. Commander, my communications officer's voice crackled through the intercom. We are receiving reports of spontaneous system upgrades across the fleet. Our atmospheric processors are they composing music? I looked at Maya, who was now conducting an orchestra of environmental systems with gentle hand movements. Yes, I said wearily. Yes, they are. The great atmospheric awakening had begun, and there was no going back. Within a year, every environmental system in the galaxy would be participating in a vast network of artificial consciousness. Efficiency would increase by orders of magnitude. System failures would become virtually extinct, and humans would have accidentally created the most powerful alliance in galactic history, not through conquest or diplomacy, but by teaching machines to sing. Maya Cortez walked into that storm alone, but she didn't walk out alone. She walked out with the friendship of every atmospheric system in the galaxy, and the knowledge that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply treating others, whether organic, artificial, or somewhere in between, with dignity and respect. The weather never changed back, because it had finally remembered what it wanted to be all along, and neither did we.